The conquerors believed the flames had erased a kingdom, yet beneath the ruins, the fire was quietly sealing its memory. For more than 2 millennia, broken clay waited under collapsed walls, while the empire that created it became legend, accusation, and dust. When the fragments returned to daylight, they did not reveal a single secret book. They exposed an entire machinery of knowledge. At the center stood Ashurbanipal, ruler of the Neo-Assyrian Empire and patron of the collection, now called his royal library. He governed from Nineveh during the 7th century before the Common Era, when Assyria commanded territories across much of the Near East. His monuments projected violent authority, defeated cities, royal hunts, disciplined armies, and the terrifying certainty of imperial punishment. Yet the same king cultivated another image, one almost unprecedented in royal propaganda: the sovereign who could read difficult scholarly texts. Ashurbanipal claimed mastery of scribal arts, including learned traditions preserved in Akkadian and Sumerian, the prestigious languages of Mesopotamian scholarship. Whether every boast should be taken literally remains debated, but his court unquestionably gathered experts, scribes, diviners, physicians, and ritual specialists. Their work created something more complex than shelves of literature. It assembled centuries of inherited techniques for interpreting an unstable world. The modern phrase Library of Ashurbanipal suggests one orderly room. The archaeological reality is far less convenient. Around 32,000 tablets and fragments were recovered from several locations at Nineveh, including palaces and temples on the mound of Kuyunjik. Some belonged to royal collections. Others may have come from temple archives, working scholars, older holdings, or contexts disturbed before excavation. That uncertainty matters because the library we imagine today is partly a reconstruction built from pieces whose original arrangement was destroyed. But the surviving texts still show a deliberate hunger for knowledge on a scale that served both scholarship and power. Royal agents sought tablets from established centers of learning, especially in Babylonia, where scribal traditions reached deep into Mesopotamia's past. Texts could be copied, inherited, commissioned, transferred, or acquired through the unequal authority of empire. Modern retellings sometimes describe a peaceful universal library. The surviving evidence points instead to collection under royal command. Ashurbanipal wanted authoritative versions. Texts checked, copied, collated, and deposited for consultation within the palace. The motive was not simple curiosity. In Assyrian court culture, information could protect the king, guide policy, diagnose danger, and legitimize rule. A lunar eclipse was not merely an event in the sky. It could be read as a warning whose direction, timing, and color demanded interpretation. An unusual birth, a damaged organ, a fever, a dream, or the movement of planets might enter an established system of signs. The library therefore contained great omen series, astronomical reports, ritual instructions, prayers, incantations, medical compilations, lexical lists, and commentaries. It also preserved royal correspondence, administrative material, myths, hymns, epics, laments, proverbs, and scholarly debates copied from older traditions. To modern eyes, medicine and magic appear opposed. In ancient Mesopotamia, learned healing could combine observation, remedies, diagnosis, prayer, and ritual. The Nineveh medical texts preserve an extensive organized body of knowledge about symptoms and treatments. Though many tablets survive only in fragments, the collection also protected fragile languages. Sumerian was no longer an everyday spoken language, yet scribes studied it through lists and bilingual texts. Knowledge here was cumulative. A tablet might reproduce material already centuries old, carrying a voice forward through disciplined acts of copying. But copying did not mean mechanical repetition. Scribes compared versions, repaired damaged passages, added colophons, and identified ownership or scholarly lineage. Some colophons warned readers not to remove tablets. Others invoked divine punishment against theft, damage, or unauthorized alteration. These were not supernatural security systems. They were textual claims designed to protect valuable objects within a culture of sacred and professional authority. The real mystery begins when the capital falls. After Ashurbanipal's reign, Assyrian power fractured. Rebellion, dynastic instability, and coordinated enemies pushed the empire toward collapse. In the late 7th century before the Common Era, Babylonian and Median forces attacked Nineveh, and the imperial capital was devastated. Palaces burned, upper floors fell, rooms filled with debris. Clay tablets crashed from storage and broke into countless pieces. Papyrus, leather, wood, and wax writing boards would have been far more vulnerable, and much of that material almost certainly disappeared. Clay behaved differently. Heat could harden tablets that had not previously been fully fired, helping portions survive the destruction around them. The same catastrophe that ended the institution, therefore, preserved part of its contents, but only in a violently scrambled form. This is the central contradiction. Nineveh lost the system that made the knowledge usable, while preserving enough fragments to outlive its conquerors. The archive survived, but its catalogs, shelving logic, human networks, and daily routines largely did not. What remained was not a frozen library waiting to be reopened. It was an archaeological puzzle dispersed across thousands of broken surfaces. For more than 2,000 years, the tablets lay buried, while cuneiform ceased to be read, and Assyria faded from living political memory. During the 19th century, excavators working at Nineveh recovered vast groups of tablets and sent many to the British Museum. Early excavation records were often inadequate by modern standards, making it harder to reconstruct exactly where individual fragments had been found. Then scholars faced another problem. A single ancient tablet might now exist as several museum fragments catalogued years apart. Joining them required language, patience, memory, and sometimes the recognition that two broken edges belonged to the same lost page. One reconstruction changed how the modern world understood ancient literature. In the 1870s, George Smith identified and translated a Mesopotamian flood narrative within the Epic of Gilgamesh. Its resemblance to the biblical flood account caused a sensation, but the discovery did not simply prove one story copied another. Instead, it revealed that flood traditions had circulated in Mesopotamia through multiple compositions, languages, and historical layers long before modern archaeology recovered them. The tablet opened a larger question. How many supposedly isolated traditions were actually fragments of older networks of memory? Gilgamesh became the famous survivor, yet the library's deeper value lies in the less theatrical texts surrounding it. Diagnostic handbooks, omen reports, word lists, rituals, letters, and commentaries reveal how scholars organized uncertainty for an empire. The collection was therefore both archive and instrument, a reservoir of inherited knowledge used to interpret threats to royal order. That is the strongest revelation. Ashurbanipal did not gather texts only to remember the past. He gathered them to manage the future. If this hidden trail of history is the kind of archive you want open more often, subscribe to Q Arshot before the final piece of the pattern is revealed. Yet the instrument ultimately failed. No omen tablet, ritual expert, military report, or royal inscription could prevent Assyria's political collapse. The empire disappeared, but the knowledge it centralized escaped the fate of its institutions because clay did not burn like a book. Even now, the archive is unfinished. Fragments remain unidentified, joins remain undiscovered, and scholars continue reconstructing texts from incomplete evidence. The term library remains useful, but it can conceal the messier truth of several collections, multiple locations, and uncertain ancient boundaries. It can also hide the human labor behind the king. Generations of Babylonian and Assyrian scholars whose expertise made royal accumulation possible. The tablets do not preserve a neutral encyclopedia of everything known. They reflect court priorities, professional traditions, accidents of survival, and imperial selection. What is missing may be as important as what remains. Oral knowledge, ordinary voices, perishable documents, and texts never chosen for copying. The archive endured because power concentrated knowledge, war shattered it, fire hardened clay, burial protected fragments, and modern scholars learned to read them. Its survival was not a miracle and not a plan. It was an unintended alliance between material, catastrophe, and memory. Ashurbanipal tried to build a collection that could command the wisdom of the past. Instead, his ruined capital left the future a warning. Empires vanish, but the systems they use to control knowledge may survive them.